We are gonna go into a session today that, is really a long time in coming. It's called high income, DHIS2 and high income context. I don't really love the framing because then we're saying that there's somehow a radically different perspective on DHIS2 from high income to low income. And so what we've actually been seeing is DHIS2 has been used in high income context for years. Lots of NGOs have used it, certain industries have used it for a long time. And we just haven't really been communicating with them, and they haven't honestly asked basically anything from us or of us. But what we're seeing now is many high-income contexts, and I'll say like ministries of health, departments of health in North, Central America, in Europe, are starting to be interested in the adoption or utilization, or at least exploring DHIS2. And they are actually asking stuff of us. They're starting to ask for features. They're starting to want to engage with the community, which is actually how it always should have been. They should have always been engaging with the community, but now we're starting to get a little bit more direct interest. And for us, it's a little bit of a challenge. How do we do it? How do we include everyone who wants to participate and engage with the community from high income contexts and low income contexts? The truth is, the reason that high income contexts are interested in DHIS2 is not because DHIS2 is free, it's because DHIS2 works, right? And many, many countries and governments are starting to say, I want data sovereignty, I want to own my code, and I don't want to have vendor lock-in. I want to in-house as many expertise as I can. And they start just Googling these things, and they're finding that DHIS2 is one of the only solutions that can provide this. So they're just emailing us out of the blue, or they're just taking DHIS2 and just running with it. I'm finding instances of DHIS2 all the time from high-income contexts that are just up online that we don't even know about, right? Different ministries, departments of health, county projects from all over the world. And so the message is that it works. It works in LMICs, it works in high-income countries, it just works. And then the challenge that we have as a community is, how do we all benefit together? How do we all continue to grow and sustain the platform? How do we take innovations from LMICs that are relevant to high-income contexts and encourage their adoption, and vice versa, high-income contexts to LMICs? But there's no divide. It's just one DHIS2 community. In the session before this, I was talking to the Data Science Nigeria folks, which have an incredible implementation of DHIS2, integrating 30 ministries into one instance, building chatbots and AI on top of it, leveraging community health workers, community response folks. It's an incredible instance of DHIS2. And I'm thinking every single country in the world needs this. And they said to me, and so I'm thinking this is like one of the most advanced things I've ever seen just in e-governance, period. And they're saying, oh, well, we just aspire to bridge the digital divide between LMICs and high-income countries. That's literally what they said to me just now, like 10 minutes ago. And I was like, what digital divide? What you guys just presented is way more integrated and comprehensive of a solution than what I see in the US, what I see in Norway. And the reason is because, a lot of these high-income countries, they have these legacy systems. They've been locked in for 20, 30 years. You hear about the US air traffic control system still using like MS-DOS, you know? Um, and and but actually, and so by adopting DHIS2, it's not like they're adopting a, a, a cheap solution made for low-income countries. They're actually usually making a pretty big leap, 30-year leap in updating their own platforms. And so we're going to try to drive that message home a little bit. And we're also going to talk about some of the opportunities. How do we frame ourselves? How do we position ourselves as a community to engage with and potentially take advantage, not take advantage of in a nasty way, but get the most that we can out of these high income contexts. So we're going to first talk about, show one example. Guttorm here from the Norwegian Institute of Public Health is going to take us through how the Norwegian Institute of Public Health is utilizing DHIS2. And I don't mean to steal your punchline, but when we first reached out to Guttorm, he said, I don't want to present. We said, why don't you want to present? He's like, we're not doing DHIS2 in the right way. Those are your words. And he said it in the email. And I thought to myself, what the hell is the right way? So you're going to tell us one right way, and we've heard of lots of other right ways. There's no wrong way. And it works for Norway. It'll work for other countries too. And then we're going to have Ben Winters and Basoya from BAO Systems come up, and they've been exploring other opportunities in North America. And we're going to have a little discussion between them about what are the opportunities? What do we see? How is DHIS2 that was mission built for LMICs easily translatable and impactful in North America context, and invites engagement and dialogue from you all as well. So I think with that, I'll hand it over to Guttorm.
So I'm excited to be here, and as said, I was afraid to present because I thought we were breaking some rules and stretching a system, but we are absolutely dependent on cohabitating with existing infrastructure, and that was surprisingly easy. So, arrow. So this will be a rather technical speak because I will describe how we implemented and what kind of things we needed to tweak. Also, I will be speaking a little about the need that we have to share the data, why there is a DHIS2 sized hole, a gap in our infrastructure. And I will not speak that much about the end user value. So before I start, I just want to scope this a little so you know roughly how big or small it is, because actually using 1, 2, 3 data engineers, we spent 6 months setting up a system that is running in production now, barring some contracts with 300 municipalities, but it works. And that's for our organization an amazing feat. People are saying, oh, how could you do this in 6 months? This is supposed to take 3 years. Well, I guess we accepted some limitations and used the right tools to stitch together some stuff. So first of all, Norway consists of 357 municipalities, and for some of you it might be a little amusing that the range for 215 persons, and the largest is well below 1 million. So and this also has some challenges because these different municipalities have very different kind of needs. They all have at least one chief medical officer that has a huge responsibility. It's supposed to keep the local community healthy, and that spans from everything from discovering tuberculosis that have popped up, keeping chlamydia in check, making sure that the pavements are de-iced during winter if there are too much fractures, and so on. In order to know the health of their community, they need data, and anonymous statistics that we normally provide is not usable, and we cannot give them, or we have had problem giving those statistics to them because the numbers are so small of certain diseases, meaning that under our legal obligation, we need to treat them as they were individual data. And this made it necessary to have a very secure infrastructure in place that we didn't have. Even though the problem itself was quite easy, give them some statistics. So that's for our users. Another building block is that Norway have over more than 50 years collected a lot of health data. So we have 10, 15 national registers that are quite big. Some of them you have yourself, like a death register and so on, but we have many. We have also 40, 50 other registers that are national but very specialized. So this project called COSY has focused primarily for legal reasons to focus on diseases, contagious diseases, and vaccinations. So we have vaccination data central. We have all kind of communicable diseases. We also have the results of all medical tests done all over the country. Every test that are being done, we have results for it. And also we have extracts from the patient, all patient journal systems. So given these data, how could we, and why is it difficult to share? And one thing is that the law the legal aspects are not easy. There is an extreme focus on security because we have this data and it's not really debated in Norway, but we are very afraid to lose trust in the population if people discover that their data is being spread. And because of that, we get extremely paranoid when it comes to sharing data, and that drives up the cost, the money. Also, even though this is a good thing, there are many other wishes that we compete for, and this project have to fight with all others. What we achieved in 6 months is pretty good, but had not been possible if we didn't have the right building blocks and the right glue to fit it together. So DHIS2, I will talk more about what kind of parts we used. The registers I've briefly mentioned. We also have electronic ID infrastructure in Norway that you use to log into your banks and that kind of stuff that is safe. So we can be pretty sure that whoever is trying to log on is that person. There is infrastructure between the municipalities in place where they offer other services that have nothing to do with health, but where they can approve certain persons to get access to data. So we had to hook into that. The DHIS2 would check with that. And we also have some ways of electronically keeping track of signatures that have been made, important for the contracts. So let me say a little about security. The first thing when I proposed to use DHIS2 that I met with is that there's no way we can put this in our infrastructure. And it's not easy because we have outsourced the whole IT the running of the IT systems, and they have extremely severe, I want to know every details. So what we ended up with doing is that we built something we call the central login page, and that we are happy, and a concept that turned out quite well, that isolates DHIS2 from the internet. So you cannot reach our DHIS2 directly. You have to go through the central login page that also does a lot of other checks, uses some infrastructure to make sure that we don't get denial of services, attacks, and so on, so on, so on. It does more because in order to have the legal everything in place with respect to terms of services, we need to have a system so the doctors sign a term of service before they get access. And we want to automate this. So what's actually happening is that, and I will talk about it later, the central login page actually creates the DH2 users. We have dedicated servers that are on the inside of some kind of secure zone, and with all the data, they are isolated. And we have also made, I won't speak so much about that, but handling these 357 municipalities and all these people that say, wow, yeah, now I need to have a look into the neighboring communities. It's a lot of administration for us to approve and de-approve, so we actually given them the right for self-service to break the glass. So we had a discussion with DHIS2 about this, and we decided to make our own little app that does that. Contact me if you're interested later. I won't speak so much about it. The central login page is super important. The first step is that it guarantees that you are you. You need to have a work, kind of easily say a work permit in Norway to do that. So please check with the official records. As soon as we are sure that you are you, we ask the central municipality hub, is this a person that your municipality has approved to access this solution? When they say yes, we check with the central government to see, has this municipality actually signed the contract with the Public Health Institute? And if this is in place and it's a new user, then we create it, give it the correct right according to what roles this person have, and create the DHIS2 user, and from there you have access. This is all transparent for the user. They type in their personal ID in what looks like the DHIS2, and this happens in between, and then they are on that. So a little about the statistics, because one thing that makes me feel uncomfortable when I'm saying we use, and I'm saying we're using the DHIS2 in a peculiar way. No way, nowhere we insert any data into it manually. There's only machine interfaces to DHIS2. The only human interface is actually users. So here is an example of the kind of statistics we make. These are two big cities, Bergen and Oslo. Bergen is in red. The upper graph is how many flu situations the doctors found in Bergen. And so you see there is a pike. Apparently there were much more flu at a certain time in Bergen than Oslo. The lower graph is actually the results from laboratory tests for influenza virus. There's no difference there. So this helps the local authorities to see, maybe your doctors are a little trigger happy about saying it's influenza. Okay, so this is a little I want to say about what kind of things we do, but these statistics are not made in DHIS2. They are presented in DHIS2. So they are produced on the outside from infrastructure we already have, but that we cannot give access to because of security zones. So actually what we do is that we have build a whole little framework. Some of it we have actually published on GitHub. Some of it is very special for our need. So we automate transfer, import, and logging every night of new data. And we have actually made some code that we can share for that. So that's the statistics. I will skip this pretty quick, but we need to use data that is DHIS2 agnostic. DHIS2 is a very good tool for importing, exporting data between DHIS2 instances, but our data is a little different, and it's our main thing, so we need to transform it into to match the metadata, and we have set up some things. We also, every now and then, need to change the data model, and deleting data in DHIS2 is not necessarily easy when you change the data model. So we have also automated these things, so it goes through the meta and cleans up when necessary. So before I run that, what works? First of all, it's a very stable system, and it's absolutely worth investing time and competence in it. It has a great way of restricting access to data, very important to us, and the way the organization hierarchy is set up was just perfect for what we were doing. It has great support, I must say. I'm really impressed about the help we have gotten, because we have had some pretty demanding requirements around security, and also we found some things that we didn't like too much, and I mean, security collaboration has been great. There is an API that is excellent, very important for us that have machine-to-machine communication. I'm saying quite decent, because what we do here is that we mainly use it from external system, not other DHIS2 things. So the API is great, and also the dashboard and visualization propelled us into results, because the work was actually getting the data into it and understanding what was a good data model. There are some the wish for the future. First of all, we are in a situation where we could want to upload like hundreds of megabytes every night, and it's not really designed. The API is not designed for that kind of batch imports. It does a lot of local checking. We do that. We have that business logic on the outside. So it's a little slow for some of our big data sets. On visualization, that's of course, that's always the curse, because the user will always tell you, oh, I need that color, I need so and so and so. But I think there are some things like more control over legends and that kind of stuff that would help us a lot. We also have a need for universal design. It's the framework is, as it is, not a little difficult to implement good universal design in it, I think. There are some quirks in the data model, like category option combos and stuff that are, if you start to push a system, you will run into some things, and it's very unforgiving if you do errors there. But okay, we have learned to live with it. And finally, actually, since we have these these doctors spread all over Norway, and we don't really want to speak with them directly. The error messages, when they have problems, we have to dig a lot into logs and find out when they were logged in, what was going on. They're not able to provide us in a simple way debug messages. So, but overall, this has worked out tremendously. Okay, I don't know how it's. Am I on time now? It's questions.
You're done?
I'm done. I'm done. I'm done. I'm done. Well,
we can take just we have time for just a couple questions, and then we're going to
I didn't hear you on Zoom.
yeah, I know. I'm just saying you can ask questions, and then we'll have the questions on Zoom too. So, any questions before we move on? Shock to silence.
So one question, I guess I should start this. How about now? Yes. Good. Now? Okay. Whoa. Sorry. You mentioned a couple of the things that you all have written and customized. You have this code you talked about on GitHub. We, as a platform, are very interested, of course, in promoting that and people building tools that they need and sharing back to the community. Do you have any observations about how to make it easier for you to contribute, or did you have any issues with trying to write things that would be helpful to other people? Just curious about that experience.
Yeah, actually, we started out with there already existed a Python library with called the DHIS2 API called written by David. I don't remember his name, but apparently he was quite invested for some time, and then he drifted away. So we forked out his library, and we modified it. Because it was outdated, and we used also some functionality that he never needed to. And that is public. Now, I think there would be a good and nice, but it's kind of hidden unless you contact us directly. So I guess that if there was, I mean, if we had some kind of community hub where we could share data, that would be good. Maybe some documentation pages. I think they exist. And also, I mean, before speaking here today, I checked with my developers if they had updated the README file and said this is a modified version, and we have done some tweaking. And of course, they hadn't. So it put some demand on us, but I think it's worth it, and we should really pay back to the community. So, yep.
I'll just say that we get regularly requests for people who are interested in a Python wrapper around the DHIS2 API, and we say there are some, but they're a little bit outdated, and you'd probably have to modify them to do the things that you want. So it would be great to work with you to kind of promote what you've done, and there are many other examples of people who have written wrappers around the API or other extensions and ways to interact with the system. That would be great to have more kind of a community page for that. We do have some places where that might fit, but we can definitely work with you on how to make that possible. Share it with the community.
I think that one of the main problems, I mean, if I see myself as a user that want to share, because I really want to, but I also know that backwards compatibility is a hard thing. So we are willing to write and document and share, but testing for backward compatibility is not something that we really have the capacity to do. And I think that that would be a great thing for the community to have maybe someone that have some kind of responsibility around checking for backwards compatibility, because that's the main reason why we don't want to promote this too hard, because we are afraid of getting support requests. Can you add this? It doesn't work in my system, and so and so. Yep. Yeah, but still you have to, that's what was happened with David, actually, because it's a very good case. He said, I'm too busy, but you can do a pull request. We did the pull request, and since we changed things, it was not just a line of code. It was like, oh, I can't check this. So even if you have that in place, someone need actually to check the quality. And David said, tell you what, I just fork it and work with it. That's the reality, I think. Yep.
Okay. Am I mute? Okay, there we go. First of all, it's always nice to see a list of requested features in a presentation. Now, you've communicated it to everyone now, so everyone's thinking, yeah, I want that stuff too. That makes sense. I think there actually, in the community, there are several solutions for some of these issues, if not covered by the core. And I think that you might find some people coming up to you after the presentation saying, oh yeah, I have an implementation, or I have a service built on top of DHIS2 that addresses one of these things that you've listed here. Okay, so one more time. Round of applause. You doing?
Thank you.
Good. And then I'm going to invite Ben and Basoya to come up. And while they're doing that and getting mic'd up, I will entertain us a little bit. So like I said, we were having lots and lots of interest, people coming to us, people asking, how do we engage? How do we get services? How do we send you, how do we pay platform fees? How do we do all this stuff? And so what we're actually trying to do, especially from North America, just this week, we got 2 new requests from North America, one from South Carolina and one from Ohio. And we're realizing, we have not historically had a network of DHIS2 implementers in North America. There are DHIS2 experts in North America, but we have not necessarily directed their focus or engaged them to pursue opportunities in North America. And because of this increasing demand, we're starting to try to organize ourselves a little bit better to be able to meet it. Basoya and Ben both represent organizations that have offices and are somewhat based in the US. They've both been doing DHIS2 implementations longer than I have, since 2012, 2009. And what we're seeing is the requests that are coming in are the exact same needs that are required in LMICs. In fact, sometimes they're even simpler. In fact, oftentimes they're quite a lot simpler. And the way that the procurement system works in most high-income contexts, we have money, give us a product, tell us how much it costs, right? Make sure it works, right? They want end-to-end services, a white glove service, oftentimes, right? And this is amazing. This is a fantastic thing. This is very common, normal, standard operating procedures, seemingly. But, our modus operandi is usually, let's go in, let's build long-term capacity in governments and ministries and that kind of stuff. That's a good approach, but oftentimes they're telling us, we actually don't want a lot of in-house capacity. We just want stuff to work, and we have money to pay for someone to make it work. And so we're realizing that we need a supplier network, essentially, to be able to meet that demand. And so enter Ben and Basoya, both working in the US. And so we're going to talk a little bit about some of the opportunities they've seen, how they think that they're able to respond to it, how they think that the community can respond to these kinds of things. And have a little bit of a chat. So there's going to be plenty of time for Q&A. So I think we're actually supposed to sit on these 3 stools.
Yeah.
So maybe you can just each take just a couple minutes and kind of explain how you got here. Like, and why are you interested in kind of pursuing these opportunities? So Ben, you can go first.
I got here on a Bolt.
That lost its battery halfway through the trip.
Oh, I think you sat on your. Try now.
I'm not doing good with battery powered devices today.
Let's go back to petrol. Remember when mics used to be coal powered?
It's working.
Hello? Hello?
It's okay, yeah. You can.
Hello? Am I on?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So the backstory, that's what we're doing now.
Yeah, quickly.
Briefly, we started supporting multiple countries in Africa with infectious disease intervention support and associated surveillance systems, data solutions. Starting in 2007, actually, we got involved with DHIS2 in 2010, tangentially through Jason Pickering, who is a grandfather to many of us here from a technical standpoint. And then into 2011, I see a lot of people chuckling about that. 2011, 2012, started implementing our own DHIS2 solutions throughout Africa and Southeast Asia. And probably have covered 24, 27 countries at this stage across the range of informatics. So I think by default, these days you have to be at least familiar with DHIS2. We've been focusing more on finer scale use case solutions like lately it's been campaign informatics. Prior to that, it was surveillance support for malaria elimination or zero dose coverage for vaccinations, things that ultimately do affect and are greatly moved by innovations in surveillance, but maybe don't cover as many countries or potential end users as DHIS2. Still have a great deal of respect for the community and continue to work with DHIS2 quite a bit. As we moved towards the US, which we now have quite a significant presence in the US now, we found there was an interesting parallel in that a lot of the frontline health workers, and these would be, at least in the stateside context, public health personnel, people that are working at counties or state health departments, outside of the sort of twist your arm, force you to send in monthly reports kind of systems that everyone has to interact with. The tool sets that are available to them or that they're using to make their own decisions and understand the context of syndromic surveillance, for example, and at the county level, are quite inadequate. And I would concur. And so we're seeing a lot of opportunities to bring in packaged solutions like DHIS2. The reason why we got involved with DHIS2 in the first place is because we were tired of piecing together end-to-end solutions for these African and Asian governments with individual modules, one for data collection, one for sort of routing and transmission, the other for aggregation and analytics, and bringing that all under one roof. And for us, the reason there was a value proposition with DHIS2 is because it sort of bundled all that into a complete package. And that still holds for the US. And so we're actively looking at mostly in the public health world because people will sort of stay in the lane that they've been working in. But state, county level public health officers, Bureau of Indian Affairs, we're sort of heavily invested there because our offices in the US right now are in the Rocky Mountain region. And we're excited to see the future. Yeah.
Well, so ABAO Systems and one of the co-founders. Interestingly, our journey is coming around full circle because two of the other co-founders started their careers in US domestic health work at the federal level, and two of us started sort of international development. So our introduction to sort of USG work again is almost like a continuation of what had already been sown as a seed many years ago. And we started off as a hosting sort of infrastructure, hosting DHIS2, and keeping one foot in international development and 1 foot in the US. We're seeing the same problems in the US, and because we have those relationships, and physical proximity is actually quite important if you're working in the US. That also gave us an advantage to be able to tap into those networks and those relationships and have those conversations with sort of US government, both at the federal level and at the state level. So that's kind of like our story into it.
Thanks. So a question for both of you. Ben, you started to touch on a little bit around kind of DHIS2 bundling services together under kind of one platform. But I was interested if you guys could touch on, so what are a few of the value propositions for DHIS2 in high income contexts?
Yeah, the stability of the system. I think it is so performative, and the barrier to entry is so low cost-wise that really people don't take us seriously when we tell them we can do this. And we're like, okay, what if we put an extra zero at the end? Does that make you feel better? And I kid you not, sometimes it does make them feel better. Like, okay, you now have a system. I think the platform itself has done itself a great service by having a longitudinal success in implementation in very difficult contexts. And you cannot ignore that, because the statistics about technology that fail to deliver a requirement is still very high. And so to find something that actually works, does what it says on the tin and maybe a little bit more, you might still have bugs, that's fine. But at the core of it, it is very appealing. And not being locked into a vendor has also been a great selling point. Like, okay, this is open source, because a lot of these organizations in the US are paying a high premium for whatever software service they're using. So cost cutting is also kind of like a good thing for them.
Yeah, I would say so we have another company that is heavily in the private sector and doesn't dabble much in development and hasn't historically. And it's very refreshing in the private sector to a certain extent because the transactions are much more straightforward. You approach someone, I'm offering you watermelon flavored candy and it costs $5. Oh, well, I happen to have $5 and I'm a big fan of watermelon flavored candy. Great, here's the transaction. You don't have to worry about whether the UN has established a framework that governs watermelon flavored candy distribution in a sustainable manner and on and on and on. There are all of these economic distortions that I think are necessary to ensure progress in developing countries when you have massive first world support coming in, trying to partner alongside, well, not anymore. Anyway, we're in a little bit of a vacuum now, but historically, trying to strengthen governments. And you just don't have that very much in the private sector. And when we engage with public health officers, State departments, Bureau of Indian Affairs back in the US, it is very much a private sector transaction. Yes, of course, you're going through public channels, you're working with government, but this is very much a watermelon candy for $5 kind of thing. And what we found is until you have already closed the deal where the value proposition has been received and accepted and you've signed the contract, all the technical minutia doesn't matter as much as you think it might. What systems they're working with now and the extraordinary frustration a lot of the end users have with their current systems, that's sort of your launching point into it, because we know that we can curate a very elegant end user experience with DHIS2. Obviously, it meets the technical requirements. They're going to be able to capture their data. They're going to be able to visualize the data. They can secure it whatever way they like. They can hitch it up to any other systems. This is me talking in very rough framework words around highly technical matters, but it can do all the things that it's meant to do, but we do it in a way that's not going to make them want to pull their hair out at the end of the day. And in the US, that's a big deal. You would think that they have mature, nice user experience-based platforms for their reporting, but they don't. It's terrible. They hate what they're using. And so that's the opportunity. And if we can add a few extra zeros on the end of it, great. It'd be nice.
Okay. So we have a long-standing arrangement of partnerships and styles of partnerships that have grown this community, largely been institutionalized, not just in DHIS2, but also many other platforms operating in LMICs. And I'm wondering, how are partnership arrangements different? Or how are partners, or what kind of new partnership arrangements would you expect to see in a higher income context?
We have found that it's very relational, getting ahead and getting into these sectors in the US. And so one of the critical partnerships that you need is someone who speaks the language. So there are already organizations and individuals who know what to say. I mean, Gutrum, when you were speaking, there are certain things that would be red flags if an external vendor came to you and started talking about implementing a system, because there is just the way these organizations are put together. So one of the things is localized, well, we would say local knowledge, but I would say more corporate or organizational specific subject matter experts that know who the language to use with budget holders is different from the language to use with the technical, I guess, guardians of the system. So that's a partnership that's critical. The second, which we have found, is for legitimacy and credibility. Now, maybe in this sector, people know BAO systems, but when we turn up at like a State Department of Health in the US, for instance, they're like, who is BAO? But if we say like BAO, working with the University of Oslo in Norway, for instance, that carries weight because there is something about an academic institution that's not in other countries of the world, but in Norway, given what Norway, maybe Switzerland would be the other competitor you have. But Norway is such a, feel-good country. Everybody feels like, you cannot go wrong or far too wrong with Norway, depending on how far not to go, but never mind. But yeah, that kind of association and alliance with an established institution which has sort of like a global brand has also been a very good sort of strategic position to open doors with some of these markets. There is another kind of US government opportunity, which I think I should mention, and that is, one, there is work where you're doing domestic work in the US, but you also have US private sector companies doing work globally within international development. And the kind of alliance, what they're asking us is, what's your footprint like? And so we're like, we're in 4 or 5 countries, but guess what? We also have local partners called DHIS groups, and they are in like 40-something countries. I don't know what, I make up a number. And like, they're in so many countries, and we have MOUs with these, and so we can activate, because when they give you the money, they need to know that you can deliver at scale. So the local DHIS groups also help when the US entity is a global entity working in multiple countries. So these kinds of alliances is what we're saying as actually quite valuable partnerships going forward.
Yeah, not much to add to that. I think, when we look at partnerships, there's kind of 3 categories that we see it, and largely aligned with what Asoya was just mentioning here. One is in business development, in that large category of ventures, which includes relationship building, understanding how the procurement systems work, what the red flags are. So we are very aggressive in pursuing partnerships in that way, because we just believe that our sort of epistemic range is pretty narrow. And so the more people we can bolt on next to us, the wider of a perspective we'll have, and that's going to be good for everybody. And then, of course, there's the implementation side. So establishing a broad partner base to be able to execute at scale, at speed, with high quality, which you just can't do going it alone, no matter if you're working at one state health department or multiple countries. And then broadly on the exploratory side, I mean, one of I think the most incredible value propositions that HISP and the university brings to this community is precisely what's happening right now. And more specifically, what was happening last night, where there was a lot of beer, there's a lot of smart people, and not a lot of agenda sort of constraining your conversation. Things just start to happen that weren't going to happen otherwise. You don't think to yourself, I think I'll put a calendar invite on Scott's email, and we're just going to brainstorm for 47 minutes on Monday afternoon, when you've got a million things to do, and so does he. But you create a venue like this, and those conversations and the germination of new ideas starts to happen. Where's Enzo? I was speaking to Enzo. We came up with a couple of ideas on the industrial side. There's great things that go on like that. And so that's the third value for partnerships in my mind, is that you think past yourself and your limited view of what's possible in the product space. And it gives you courage to sort of fly a little closer to the sun. Maybe not too close, but...
This is the closing out the conference now. And in the beginning of the conference, Kristen mentioned the elephant in the room, which is the contracting financial landscape of international development right now. And instead of ending on a low note, I want to end on a high note and ask you, what are you excited about? What opportunities are you really excited about? What parts of the community engagement are you really excited about?
Yeah. There's a downside to comfort. And the downside to comfort is complacency. For so many years, the DHIS2 community and DHIS2 work has enjoyed a level of comfort and predictability. And it's not a bad thing. But I feel maybe the entrepreneur in me feels like it's exciting to have a shakeup. Maybe once every 20 years, maybe once every 30 years, perhaps, like this. Because opportunities that we have ignored for so many years, have thought about it, have thought it would be good to diversify, to look at other use cases, to look at other markets, look at other accounts. We've thought about it, we've had discussions about it, but we've never actively pursued those opportunities. And so now we are forced to start looking at places still doing good. So we're not going to be in, I was going to say cannabis growing, but for some people, that's okay. But anyway, to start looking at other venues where we can still do good, where we have been up to now invisible. And some of those organizations are open. They're open to new ideas, they're open to new players. And I think this is untapped. This is the new oil. This is untapped markets. And we bring all of our creativity, we bring all of our experience, and we transpose them to speak a new language in a new way to service a new sector. And for me, that's incredibly exciting because it's a new lease of life. I mean, I'm not thinking retirement anytime soon. So it would be, a shame to be doing the same thing that I was doing 20 years ago and still continue to do that. So we're going to new things with new people. Kristen said new friends, old friends, but also getting new friends along the way. So yeah, that's for me, that's quite exciting.
Just not in the cannabis industry.
Not just, not for me. If
You
it works for
you can do cannabis industry if you want, but
Yeah, we'll do it. Yeah, I actually share that. I love the current crisis in a lot of ways. And the reason is because for years, we've been running around the development industry for, almost 20 years now. And all of these things that we say we were going to do, we're going to decrease dependency on external organizations. We're going to make sure that there's sustainability at the country level. Well, we've just had the greatest test of sustainability and autonomy and independence, and we have failed miserably. Countries are flailing right now, wondering what to do with their dwindling budgets. Global Fund, I just on a call with them yesterday. They don't know what to do. RBM, all the players. And that's not to say that I enjoy seeing beneficiaries amongst these LMICs no longer able to access critical life-saving medicines. That is a tragedy, always will be. But we now have the opportunity as a resource-rich group of countries and individuals to rethink how it is that we're approaching countries, rethink some of these value propositions. Very, very simple things like if the country really does want increased visibility into its health systems and trends in informatics, is it willing to pay for DHIS2? I know that's anathema around here, might get me kicked out of the conference, but there might be an opportunity now for countries to exhibit more leadership and direction into the priorities that they have established outside of the priorities they established when someone comes and writes a $50 million check, puts it on their table and says, let's talk about your priorities, obviously distorting the conversation. So we have now in front of us a chance to rethink a lot of that because we don't have the crutch of distortion level resources coming in. And I just believe that the world will rearrange itself. There will be new markets. I'm having a great time right now. In one of the companies we have, Across, which is the one that Scott worked for before Kristen poached him and he came over here. We have had the great privilege now of scooping up a lot of these former President's Malaria Initiative experts who now have no job, but are very keen and passionate about continuing to solve the malaria crisis in the years to come. And they're now working on a volunteer basis with a core team from ACROS to approach malaria endemic countries, be sort of a mediator between those countries and Global Fund and RBM as they kind of get their ducks in a row and make plans for the future. It's a blast. We love it. We're having a great time. There are strategies, there are solutions to be had, and we just happen to be surrounded by some of the most dedicated and intelligent people in the world as we take this head on. Now, these are the things that people write books about. Maybe not me, but you know, the time that we're in. And I frankly think it's a privilege to be in the middle of it. Not great. I'm not celebrating the increased morbidity and mortality that we will no doubt see across the continent of Africa. Actually, we won't see it because they've cut all the M&E funding, but it's going to happen. But I'm not celebrating that, but I think the opportunity to come in and bring a great deal of dedication, passion, and intelligence around solving those problems is a privilege. I feel privileged to be part of that. Yeah.
Great. And I think with that, we'll have to end it. I think we're over time a little bit. We're 5 minutes over. Okay, a little bit. So I think we won't have time for any questions. I apologize for that. But of course, we're still here. So if you want to have any follow-up with any of us, any of the speakers here, please do catch us. There's a coffee break happening now, and then we'll go into the plenary to wrap up the conference. So yeah, please go over to the other building. Don't hang out here. In fact, I think that's where the coffee is. Yeah.